So what I learned over the weekend is if you have any kind of image that has transparencies, it has different effects, basically the stuff that you guys are working on, the perspective grid doesn't like to do anything with it. What the perspective grid is good for is, let's say you have a bunch of general shapes. Whoops, let me turn this off. So let's say I just have some general dimensions for my box. And you should be able to have just really simple stuff in here, so things that are more flat. So maybe there's a circle on this. So I can take this and then go to the perspective grid, and all of these different doohickeys allow you to adjust the perspective. So I can move this up and down. I can move the planes so that they overlap in different ways. So maybe I kind of want to build a room or something like that. You can also, there's also ways to change, like whether or not you do a 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, 3-point perspective. But in this case, we'd just be doing, obviously, the 2-point. Anytime you're with the perspective grid tool, you have this little button up here, and each side of the cube corresponds to a surface, a plane in the perspective grid. So right now I have orange selected, so that's this face here. And with the selection tool, I should be able to select an object and drag it into place in that plane. So when you have more simple objects, it's really nice and works pretty well. If I want to put this side in, that needs to go where the blue plane is, so I click blue, and then I just click that and drag it where I need it to go. You can also, while you're in the perspective grid mode, you can take shapes. Let's say I take the rectangle tool again, and I can start building directly into the perspective. So what you might want to do, if you like the idea of having a definite perspective to work within, I would say you could use this as a basis and maybe set up the angles and everything you want to use, and then start to use the skew tool to adjust it more easily. Now when it comes to using the skew tool, you can take your more complex images and scale them pretty well. So this is a thing I put together, say for the front of my cereal box. And I don't think I flattened anything. Most of the, like all the text is outlined, and a lot of things are expanded, but the transparencies and effects and everything are still there. This is inside of a clipping mask right now. So I'm actually going to put a color back here so we can see what the boundaries look like. And the skew tool, you can get to some of the transform features by going up to Object and Transform, and you can choose from the menu here. Transform also has a window that you can bring up. Someone just asked me about scaling strokes and effects. If you want to be able to change it pretty quickly, that feature comes up right there, so you might want to leave this window open if you have to change that a lot. But there's also the free transform tool, so that's over here on the toolbar, and With Creative Cloud, you get this pop-up window. So you have three options. Free transform means you can take your selected object and do a lot of different things with it. You can stretch it, you can rotate it. You have more control. Perspective distort is what you guys will want to do. So I'm going to select everything and cross my fingers and hope that this works. And with this one, I should be able to go to one side and shift the entire image to fit into a perspective. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy this, and I could do this all in the same document, but I don't know. I just have them all in separate ones right now. I'm going to paste that in here where I have my perspective grid. And since I have these angles here, what I can do is use the transform tool. First, I'm going to scale this down to the size I want it, and use this perspective distort to change around the angles. This one down here, free distort, I can take this, and if I hold just one of the corners, I can move just one aspect around. So let's see, I want to bring this in. And then try to move these parts at the top and bottom so they look more natural. So I'm kind of using that pink box I made as a guide. So if I go and turn the perspective grid off, and to turn the grid off, you have to press this X on the button here, and it won't really let you do that most of the time unless you're in the perspective mode. But I'm going to hide the grid, and then I can see how that image is working. The other feature I was talking about with the rotating and all of that to make the bottle look the way you want it to, that all is still the same. It's a matter of getting whatever your symbol is to go in the correct spot on the bottle. So just to kind of go over that again, with an object that's more of a cylinder shape, what I have done in this case is I've taken a bottle, I've traced a photograph of it, and for the revolve feature, I'm going to clip this in half. Just put this one to the side, and like I mentioned last time, the stroke color is what determines the color of the object. So since I have this as black, if I were to do the revolve feature right now, the bottle would be black, which I do not want. So I'm going to change that to something that will be easier to see. And then I'm going to go to Effect, 3D, and Revolve. If I do preview, then I can see what's happening here. So I can see how that bottle gets rendered. And as I mentioned last time, you can change the point of view. So if I want it to look upward and all that sort of thing, I can change that. You can also use these standard rotations from the drop down. So that's how I get the general shape. And what I was trying to show last time, these symbols are how you can get different things onto the bottle. So I'm going to try something a little bit more simple and see how this works. So let's say this is my label. Obviously be more complex than this. I can just click this and drag it up to symbols, just like I'm making a swatch or something. I might want to name it. And then that gets put in there. Now what I can do is I can pull up my appearance window and go back to 3D Revolve and go to the Map Art button down here. And when you have preview selected, it's going to show you different surfaces on which you can put the symbols. So the first one is like the top of the cap, and I'll just kind of cycle through until I get the surface that I want. And then you go to symbol and choose the symbol that you want to put in. And it brings it in for you. So you can move it around and adjust it and everything. See, this is what I don't get. I don't know why it's not showing over here. Let's see. I'm just going to press OK and see if anything happens. I think it's trying to do something. Maybe if I take this off. Nope. So I think it's trying to put the label on there, but for whatever reason it's not showing up. There is a video that has an example where they've actually put the artwork on there and it worked for them. So I can give you all a link to that one. But at least in terms of your boxes and that sort of thing, I think the skew tool, possibly coupled with the perspective grid, is the best way to go. Really, as you're working with all of these, just be aware of how large your files are and how many programs you have open, because especially if you're working with a lot of textures and everything, it will start to slow down the computer. Okay.